In the news tonight, His Majesty urges speedy government action to revamp public administration and ensure an e-government system is in place by 2020.
Iraqi forces kill the Daesh commander of Mosul's old city as the battle focuses on a bridge crossing the Tigris River.
And the Dutch go to the polls tomorrow in an election seen as a test of anti-establishment sentiment in the European Union. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news.
Good evening.
His Majesty the King directed the government to speed up the development of the administrative system and ensure that e-government scheme is in place by 2020. He said the reform drive should address overstaffing in public administration and achieve better performance and quality of service for both citizens and investors. King Abdullah said, as he chaired part of a cabinet meeting at the Prime Ministry, that achieving the paperless government is a necessity and that there is no room for procrastination in this matter. Each minister, he said, has the responsibility to speedily achieve economic legislation and implement the legislative recommendations proposed by the Royal Committee for Developing the Judiciary and Enhancing the Rule of Law. He stressed implementation of a clear economic stimulus program that would accommodate to the needs of the various sectors, help achieve targeted growth rates and create new job opportunities in a manner that reflects positively on the citizens. Calling the upcoming parliamentary elections a key milestone in the reform drive, the King urged full government support of the Independent Election Commission in the preparation for the polls. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki said the King's directives to the ministerial team are a huge incentive to bolster the development and reform drive in the various sectors. He said the decentralization law and holding the municipal elections in August will be the crowning achievement of political reform. Mulki said the government is forging ahead with the economic reform program, whose keystone is to protect the middle and low income groups.
The old civil ID cards will be no longer valid by mid-June and should be replaced with the smart ID cards. Interior Minister Ghalib al-Zu'bi said the new highly secured smart IDs will only be accredited for personal transactions. He urged the public to acquire new smart IDs at civil status offices. Iraqi government forces killed Daesh commander of Mosul's old city as the battle for the city focused on a bridge crossing the Tigris River. A federal police officer said the military commander of the old city, Abu Abdurrahman al-Ansari, was killed during operations to clear Bab al-Tob district. With many Daesh leaders having already retreated from Mosul, Ansari's death comes as a blow to the terrorists as they defend their shrinking area of control, street by street and house by house. As fighting intensifies after the previous day's heavy rains, civilians streamed out of western neighborhoods, recapturing by government. Daesh snipers were slowing the advance of Interior Ministry rapid response units on the Iron Bridge linking western and eastern Mosul. But the elite forces were still inching forward. Iraqi troops, meanwhile, continued to battle Daesh for control of the Iron Bridge over the river Tigris in western Mosul. Capturing the Iron Bridge would mean Iraqi forces hold 3 of the 5 bridges that span the Tigris.
Russian-led peace talks on Syria were derailed as rebels backed by Turkey boycotted a third round of meetings in Kazakhstan. The Kremlin also indicated there were international divisions over the process. Describing the rebels as Turkish proxies, the Syrian government envoy said Ankara had broken its commitments to the Astana process. The European Union's top diplomat, Federica Mogherini, said she believes common ground could be found within international players for Syria to try to turn a proxy war into a proxy peace. Mogherini has for months been talking to 8 regional players in the Middle East, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Lebanon, seeking to find any minimum common ground between them on what the future peace could look like.
This will involve Syria, Syrians, but also the rest of the region, in particular the neighboring countries, and our work with them will continue, both in the present, in terms of supporting the Syrian refugees that they host, and especially supporting the hosting communities in Turkey, Jordan and Lebanon, as we're doing, but also in terms, as I said, of turning somehow a proxy war into a proxy peace. I believe, and we are seeing, that there is some common ground that can be found with the international players, with the regional actors, that can facilitate this process.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met with U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy in the West Bank city of Ramallah as the new U.S. administration tries to restart peace talks between Palestine and Israel. Making his first trip to the Middle East as Trump's envoy, Jason Greenblatt has been charged with determining whether tangible progress can be made toward peace between the Palestinians and Israelis. Yesterday, Greenblatt met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and reaffirmed Trump's commitment to help the two sides achieve a lasting peace through direct negotiations. Acting State Department spokesman Mark Toner said the visit of Greenblatt is the first of what will become many visits.
And East Libyan forces said they had regained control of the major oil port of Ras Lanuf and Sidr from a rival faction that seized them earlier this month. A military spokesman said the eastern-based Libyan National Army had taken back the ports and was pursuing fighters from the Benghazi Defense Brigades towards the town of Ben Jawad west of Sidr. The claim could not be independently verified. The Libyan National Army and the Benghazi Defense Brigades are on opposite sides in a stop-start conflict between factions based in eastern and western Libya that erupted in 2014. Meanwhile, the United Nations said fighting in Libya's oil coastline region this month has been marked by human rights violations, while attacks are likely to worsen in coming days. A UN human rights spokeswoman told a regular briefing in Geneva that credible reports suggest that unlawful killings, including summary executions, hostage-taking, arbitrary detentions, torture, and widespread raids of civilian homes have been occurring in a number of towns.
We're deeply alarmed that the fighting and airstrikes by the LNA may continue to escalate in the coming days, and indeed they've already escalated overnight, leading to further human rights abuses against civilians. We urge all parties to the conflict to fully respect international human rights and humanitarian law, and to take all possible precautions to ensure that civilians are not harmed, and to treat all detainees humanely. We also urge all those with influence to work to de-escalate the situation.
Turkey has suspended high-level contacts with the Netherlands as the diplomatic row between the two countries continues to escalate. The Turkish Deputy Prime Minister said all contacts at government level and higher will be frozen until the Netherlands meets Turkey's demands. He also rejected claims that Turkey has deliberately escalated the situation in order to benefit in an upcoming referendum. And as the tension mounts between the two countries, could a possible apology from the Netherlands defuse the tensions? Here's the story.
An apology from the Netherlands won't be enough. That's the message from Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan after his ministers were banned from electioneering among the Turkish Dutch population ahead of an April referendum on his powers. The Turkish president warning more sanctions could follow. He's already suspended high-level diplomatic relations and banned the Dutch ambassador and diplomatic flights from the Netherlands. The move further inflaming tensions in a diplomatic quarrel that shows no signs of abating. Erdogan calling on expatriate Turks to not vote for, quote, government and racists days before a Dutch general election. Geert Wilders, the populist who wants to de-Islamicize the Netherlands, hoping the dispute will boost his chances in Wednesday's polls. While Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte says the sanctions are not too bad, but inappropriate. The Turkish measures have no economic consequences, but certainly won't ease tensions. European Union leaders now calling for calm between the two NATO allies, urging them to defuse the escalating dispute.
And so the Dutch go to the polls tomorrow for the most bitterly contested election in decades between Prime Minister Mark Rutte and nationalist Geert Wilders. The election is also the first of three big tests this year of anti-establishment sentiment in the European Union. The Dutch vote is followed by the French presidential election in April and May and the German parliamentary election in September. A snap poll yesterday showed a boost of 3 seats for Rutte's People's Party for Freedom and Democracy and 2 for Wilders' Party for Freedom in the 150-seat parliament. Rutte is casting the election as a two-horse race, and the choice, he says, is simple: chaos or continuity. Wilders has pledged to take the Netherlands out of the European Union, calling it an exit, shut its borders to all immigrants from Muslim countries, shutter mosques and ban the Quran. The French government and Christian charities launched an effort to bring 500 Syrian and Iraqi refugees to France as an alternative to the deadly Mediterranean crossing. The agreement signed at the Élysée Palace in Paris called for vulnerable refugees to be brought from Lebanon in the coming 18 months as part of the project. At the initiative of the Catholic charity, the community of Sant'Egidio in Italy, and Ecumenical Alliance of Christian groups have come together to help resettle refugees in Europe. The effort has already resettled hundreds of people in Italy, getting children enrolled in schools and finding housing, jobs and language classes for parents.
We also need the involvement of our civil societies, and your action joins ours, because with this protocol we will go together with the services of the state to reach these refugees where they live or survive, and in particular the most vulnerable by way of their age or health, and your objective to bring 500 of them here in France. Some will say it's a small number, but for organizations like yours it is already a lot.
The injustice and the suffering that bruise humanity today, the death of men, women, children and old people in the Mediterranean Sea, is a disgrace. A disgrace that urges us today to resist and propose this secure transfer by plane and integration of 500 people chosen amongst the most vulnerable. Yes, it is possible to offer an alternative to the deadly trip through the Mediterranean by taking these people away from human traffickers.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has won the right to launch Brexit proceedings with the European Union and begin 2 years of talks that will shape the future of Britain and Europe. May said she will seek the Queen's approval this week to trigger Article 50. But beyond saying she will begin the formal process later this month, May has yet to answer the question of exactly when and end 9 months of guesswork as to how her government will approach the uncharted territory of leaving the EU. May hopes to negotiate terms that keep ties with the other 27 member states as close as possible, but also satisfy Eurosceptics in her ruling Conservative Party.
Tonight, the bill on Article 50 successfully completed its passage through both houses unchanged. It will now proceed to royal assent in the coming days, so we remain on track with the timetable I set out 6 months ago. And I will return to this House before the end of this month to notify when I have formally triggered Article 50 and begun the process through which the United Kingdom will leave the European Union. This will be a defining moment for our whole country as we begin to forge a new relationship with Europe and a new role for ourselves in the world.
Meanwhile, the European Commission says it is ready for the start of Brexit negotiations whenever the notification arrives. Commission spokesman Alexander Winterstein said the EU and its Brexit chief negotiator were ready to handle 2 years of talks with the British government.
The thing I know is that we're waiting for a formal notification, and then the negotiation process will start, and this negotiation process will be one between the European Union and Her Majesty's government.
Snow blanked parts of the northeast United States as a blizzard rolled in. Residents were being advised to stay at home. Airlines grounded flights and schools canceled classes. National Weather Service blizzard and winter storm warnings were in effect for the region, including New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Forecast spoke of up to 60 centimeters of snow by early tomorrow and temperatures way below normal for this time of the year. Above ground subway service was suspended as transit officials in the New York metro area warned that more bus and train routes might be suspended throughout the day. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey prepared hundreds of snow-clearing vehicles at the three major New York area airports. Airlines canceled more than 5,800 flights across the United States. New York City Public Schools, the largest school system in the U.S., canceled classes. The district in Boston, Fairfax County, Virginia, and Philadelphia were also closed. To mark the centenary of the death of French sculptor Auguste Rodin, Paris's Rodin Museum is displaying previously exhibited sculptures by the artist. The museum director said the anniversary of the famous artist's death will be marked by looking to the future instead of the past. Works by contemporary German artist Anselm Kiefer will also be shown in an exhibition that demonstrates the unusual convergence of these two artists from very different time periods. Alongside the new contemporary exhibition, the museum is also showcasing works by Rodin that have never before been displayed to the public. Absolution, made of plaster, material, and wood, and which has been newly restored, is one of them. Third-seeded Stan Wawrinka is through to the round of 16 with a straight set win at the ATP Indiana Wells event in California. Wawrinka, a Swiss, got past German Cole Schreiber 7-5, 6-3 to set up a meeting with unseeded Yoshihito Nishioka of Japan, who rallied back from down 6-1, 5-2 to upset 13th seed Czech Thomas Berdych 1-6, 7-6, and 6-4.
6-1, 6-4. Game, set, and match. Lajovic. 2-1.
Colombian Nairo Quintana laid down an early marker for the Tour de France. Quintana won the Tirreno Adriatico stage race after holding on to his overall lead at the end of the final time trial. Australian Rohan Dennis prevailed in the 10.5-kilometer solo effort against the clock. He finished second overall ahead of France's Thibaut Pinot. Quintana, a twice Tour de France runner-up, finished with a 25-second advance over Dennis, with Pinot ending up 36 seconds off the pace.
And finally, relatively cold and partly cloudy across the kingdom for the rest of tonight, with a low of 5 degrees Celsius in Amman. Tomorrow, similar weather prevails in most regions, with rain in the northern parts gradually extending to other parts of the kingdom. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk, blowing dust in the southern and eastern regions. The Gulf of Aqaba can expect a relatively warm day, while winds will be northerly moderate and the seas somewhat rough. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty urges speedy government action to revamp public administration and ensure an e-government system is in place by 2020.
Iraqi forces killed the Daesh commander of Mosul's old city as the battle focuses on a bridge crossing the Tigris River.
And the Dutch go to the polls tomorrow in an election seen as a test of anti-establishment sentiment in the European Union. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan.
And I'm Rana Hassan. Thank you for watching and good night.
Good night.